Guys, today I'm going back to terrain and I'm going to show you how to make a small pond without using any complicated or expensive water effect. As a demo piece, I chose a small square 6mm MDF base. You can see I already dug a small pond in the center and then primed everything with some PVA glue. I also quickly beveled the borders with a cutting knife, but you really don't need to. It just looks better on the table if you do it. For the pond, I just quickly made a sketch on the MDF and carved the piece with a blade. MDF is paper, but still be careful not to hurt yourself in the process. The first step is to mix some sculpting plaster and start terraforming the piece. If you want to know how to do this, I will probably make a video in the future, but in the meantime, go and check out Luke's APS instructions. So I grabbed the container where I mixed the stuff and started applying it all around the MDF. The only thing you want to be sure not to do is to fill the pond with sculpting plaster, so stay thin down there. You already saw me doing this in the very first video of this channel, so I split this up. Once the piece is completely covered, but before this thing starts to dry, go grab some stones and place them wherever you want. You need to prepare them beforehand, of course. Also, there's no need to use plaster rocks. You can use the natural rocks you have in your garden, for example, even though the painting will be totally different if you do so. The sculpting plaster dries really quickly, so once you're satisfied with your creation, leave it stand for half an hour. The second step I usually do when painting terrain is painting the rocks. Use the standard brown washing technique using diluted brown paints. I put the washes in these plastic bottle caps. So the colors I have are yellow ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and charcoal gray. This one mixed with a tiny drop of black paint. If you use craft paint like I did here, be sure to properly dilute them because they're pretty thick straight out of the bottle. The painting itself is quite easy. You just go straight on the rocks and stain them randomly. First, use the yellow ochre. Next, the burnt sienna. Try to achieve a uniform distribution of spots on the rocks, then move on to burnt umber. Be sure to dilute this one a little bit more than the other two and use it as a dark wash all over the rocks. Finally, do the same thing again using black to give the rocks their final dark look. Here I'm back with the finished rocks. I gave them a good dry brush using watercolor silver grey and titanium buff white. They look pretty good, I think. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit off cam, where I will paint the ground brown and sprinkle some ground cover on top of the piece. So the ground's being painted with a generic brown and sprinkled with ground cover. I tried to color match the brown and the ground cover, and as you can see, the result is already pretty good without adding any paint on top. Furthermore, my son had fun with this piece and the rocks chipped a little bit here and there, but nothing too complicated to repair with some grey paint. Now I start painting the bottom of the pond, starting from game color desert yellow. It's close to the ochre, but with some green in it. This helps to represent the presence of algae in the water. You don't want to go above the imaginary water line with this paint, so take your time. Now, here we have to start thinking in 3 dimensions. What do I mean by that? That we will have water on top of these colors, and we want to give some depth to that water using darker paint as we move towards the center. So mix some earth in the yellow and start wet blending it in the pond. When it's all covered, add some thick green, like very controlled amounts, and distribute some green all over the pond surface. Our water will look full of algae and green. So now leave this paint to dry and prepare for the poor man's water effect, PVA glue. What I have here is the cheapest Japanese PVA glue I could find. It takes some time to dry, but if you don't mind, this can make some nice water effect almost for free. If the pond is too deep, doing one single pouring will take ages to dry, so I usually do 2 or maybe 3. It takes about 24 hours per layer to dry. So drop some glue in a paper cup and add a micro drop of thick green. Well, actually you can use whatever green or brown you have, depending on the results you want. Like I want green brown algae rich water here, so I go with thick green. This water will be the kind that you use to water your crops, for example. Definitely not drinking water. After the mix is done, just pour it or paint it into the pond. Be sure to level it and leave it stand for at least 1 day. So here's the glue after 24 hours. And here's the pond after a second pour. After another 24 hours drying time, the second pour is almost dry. There is still this whitish portion here, as you can see, but it's winter now and it was admittedly taking more time than I expected to dry, so I just decided to move on to the next step. The surface is dry anyway, right? And speaking of which, you can see how some delicate waves were formed by the glue here. Next, we start flocking. Grab some watered down PVA glue and start painting small spots here and there. We are going to layer different flock colors, so we need to separate the different areas. In addition to fixing the flock to the base, the glue also helps cementing the ground cover in place. So when you have enough spots, grab your darkest flock and sprinkle it on. I use dark green scatter from Expo Landscape Scenics. There are way better flocks, but this was so cheap and I have a ton of it. But still, when I'm done with the flocking, I will still recover all the unused one. So next, we redo the glue thing all around the base and then we sprinkle with mid green. It's the mid-tone, so we want to give it the most coverage possible. This time I prepare the tissue to catch the excess. You can use newspaper, whatever you think it's best. So when you're done, again lift, shake and recover the unused flock. Now repeat the whole gluing and sprinkling thing once again with the light green and finally add some yellowish green on the piece. What I use here is the blended turf from Woodland Scenics. The piece of terrain already looks really good, but to go even further, I will add some clumping foliage. I have light and dark green hedge foliage from Javis. Glue small bits of the foliage here and there using PVA glue and tweezers. Doing one piece at a time takes a lot of effort, but sprinkling works better on bigger pieces, so just be patient or do whatever you prefer. Here I have the finished piece. You can see it's pretty solid. I'm sure the white spot here will vanish over time and the glue will become clear and look more watery. Also, here I decided to go for this algae-rich green, but you can go easier on the paint or just use brown to make more dirty water. Do whatever pleases you. Actually, if you add some white and a touch of blue, it will look like a hot spring, so pretty cool. Well, next I will spray everything with watered down PVA glue to seal the piece and we are done. So here you have it, a really cheap and relatively easy way to make water just using plain PVA glue. I know, it's old school and doesn't stand up for comparison with modern water effects, but it's non-toxic, so you can do this with your kids. I hope to see you guys next week. If you liked this tutorial, please like and subscribe so I can keep making more. And don't forget to leave your comments and critiques in the comment section below so I can keep improving. Thank you for watching.